Hi, how are you? Yeah, I took off a couple of days this week to give my back a rest, but I am back. And I put together a list of 10, what I call own a printer, 10 must-dos. So let's go ahead and jump in. By the way, rather than look at it on my phone, I went ahead and printed it on my XP15000. A lot easier to read, and I don't have to enter my password every 10 seconds. Great thing to have available when you have a printer that has Wi-Fi. And the XP15000 really is proven to be something that to tell the truth, I just cannot live without lately. And these came about because of a lot of questions from users. And basically, these are things that you really have to take into account when you get into this craft or hobby, or if it's a money-making operation, so be it. As long as it regards photo printers, this is the top 10, as I call it, things you must do. And as I discussed in my very last, actually, video, where it was sort of like a half rant, half sort of, please make sure you do this. Everybody was really positive about it. Learn how to print. Please do not go half-cocked at buying a photo printer, even if the price is perfect and you just cannot resist the deal you may see online or at a local shop. Sure, go ahead and buy it, but do not set it up. Once you set it up, you are committed. Okay, so learn the process. There's a lot of videos. Why do I say there's a lot of videos? Because I have a bunch of videos, 1,700 plus videos that cover just about every aspect, from specific videos about printers, different models that is, the different processes of printing, different settings, different modes, different inks. But what I would suggest, since I have looked around and I really have not found any, say, a group of videos that teach you the basics of photo printing with inkjet printers, look at my playlist, Basic Photo Printing. It's about 10 videos. I don't think I even have that many. But check it out and learn from there. Learn the theories, learn the process mentally so that it is ingrained in you before you commit to setting up that printer. I know it's very tempting to do so, but learn how to print first so you don't have questions later. They're not going to teach you how to print. I'll tell you that straight up. They are not going to teach you how to print. They assume you know how to print. That's why I say that. And that's why I basically exist in YouTube, to teach you how to print, to teach you how to take all those gorgeous images that you shoot with your camera or create using some creative software on your computer. And then besides creating digital versions of them, you want to go ahead and create real prints that you can handle and touch. So make sure you do that. Realize, number 2, that was number 1. Yeah. Number 2 is realize simply how expensive this is going to be. Period. There's no icing on the cake. That's all been scraped off. Other groups may tell you that, oh, it's okay. No, it is expensive. Expensive as hell. Okay? Inks are ridiculously expensive for most printers, especially those that are small and utilize very small volume cartridges. The price per milliliter of ink is ridiculous. It can be as high as $1.30 something per milliliter. Okay? And as you are learning, unless you learn prior, if you got a friend that has a printer, have him help you. Have him help you, especially if he already knows how to print. A photographer that prints might be a good choice to contact. Anyway, yes, inks are expensive. Papers, good papers, are not cheap. It'll be at least 50 cents per sheet. You screw up 3 times, that's $1.50 you just tossed in your learning process. And you will have to go through that process. Some fine art papers may be as expensive as $5, $6, $7 a sheet, depending on the size. So be aware of that. Now, at the end, I will show you there are options to at least lower the cost of printing. Remember, you will need certain instruments also to help you with certain aspects. We'll cover that as I go by these 10 top or must-dos, as I call them. Well, let's assume that you now know how to print. You have studied the basics. You know what to set your drivers to. You know how to utilize the automatic matching to an ICC profile on an Epson or Canon printer using that same brand of paper, and you're ready to jump in. So, you crack open that box. You start removing all of the contents that come with that box. You look at, hopefully you look at the instruction setup guide, and you begin to set up your printer. You install the printhead if it's a Canon printer, then the cartridges. If it's an Epson printer, you just basically install the cartridges, and then it goes into an ink recharge, meaning that it actually pushes out air or packing fluid that may exist in that printhead. That goes into the waste ink pads or the waste ink container. If it's a user replaceable one, certain printers have that. And basically you recharge the printhead with ink. That'll be the virgin recharge or first charge. Now, you think you're going to start printing your images. No, stop. Erase that from your mind. You cannot do that just yet. How do you know that printer is outputting as the factory meant for it to output? You have to complete a couple of tests before you do so. On Epson and Canon printers that are basic, in other words, tabletop models, up to say like 13-inch capacity, you will begin by running a nozzle check. On your maintenance tab in your printer driver, you will find that option. Run a nozzle check from the very beginning and then study it. On an Epson printer, it will look like that. It'll be a set of bars. You see kind of a squarish channel representation of each color, and you're looking for missing lines that should be black, magenta, cyan, or yellow, and you look for the ones that are missing. If you have any missing, then you have to run a cleaning cycle. Don't think you can jump right into printing, folks. You have to perform this test first. Presumably that the initial ink charge of the printhead would take care of that. No, sometimes it does not. Sometimes there's a little bit of air trapped in there. You have to push that out. So run the nozzle check. If it doesn't come up 100%, run a cleaning cycle, another nozzle check. You should have a perfect one. On a Canon printer like the Pro 1000, it looks like this. Again, a different design, but basically it's the same thing. You're looking for missing lines. Once you have established that the printer is actually flowing in 100%, then you do a printhead alignment. And on today's modern printers, it's no longer a manual thing that you have to perform and examine each paper and choose the best result from 1 through 7 or whatever. No, it's done automatically. Printers now have internal sensors that read the results and automatically make adjustments. So by the end of the process, as long as it passes, your printer will have a printhead that is aligned. And what does that mean? That means that it will synchronize by the length that the paper is advanced after each pass. Ink is laid down in rows of dots mixed up, but it will not overlap and it will not have a gap. So the synchronization of the distance that the paper is advanced, or the length that the paper is advanced, will match exactly the width of the amount of ink laid down. It's very, very intricate and something that requires a lot of accuracy. The way printers do that is beyond me, let me tell you that. So the way that you know later on, once you become a well-seasoned photo printer, is that you see banding, and it's not due to missing nozzles. It's always due to a head alignment problem, unless you have a very dirty encoding strip. Let's not get into that right now. I don't want to blow your minds. Okay, so initial ink charge, followed by nozzle check, followed by head alignment. Now you can print. And what are you going to print? You're not going to print any of your images. Not yet. Just hang in there. You have to use a control image. How do you know? Let's get into that next. But how do you know that your monitor is actually displaying your images correctly? Don't get ahead of yourselves though. So you're going to open up a standard evaluation image. Unfortunately, the site that used to house those is down. So I have taken the time to download all of those images plus extras and put them on my Files tab in my Facebook group, Photo Printing Techie Facebook group. Join, and then you will have access to not only those images but also a lot of other stuff, including some service manuals as well. So open that image. Do not examine it in your monitor. It may look correct, it may not look correct. Don't worry about that. That comes later. File, print. On a Canon printer, you're going to let the Canon driver control color. On a Windows machine, you click on a little box that says color / intensity manual adjustment. Then open up the matching tab and choose ICM or driver matching. It'll probably be defaulted to driver matching. And then you print on Canon paper. So say for instance ProLuster. You will install some ProLuster paper in your printer. You'll get some free sheets of it with your brand new printer, by the way. And then you choose either ICM or driver matching. That will then allow your printer driver to print on that paper that you chose on your drop down menu, or your media menu, that is. You choose luster, and it will then match it to the ICC profile that's already installed in your hard drive in your computer. It will do an automatic link to it. You don't have to even think about color management as long as you're using Canon paper. The same thing on Epson printers. As long as you set the color mode, which will probably be like Epson sRGB, never use that. Never use that. If you use Epson Media, only use ICM. That will link it to that particular matching ICC profile. It's absolutely 100% color management, done by the driver for you. Color management, what is that? You don't even know what that is yet. Okay, unless you read about it when you were initially learning about the process of photo printing. But if you follow those instructions, it will automatically link it to that ICC profile. You will get near perfect results, as good as your printer can provide out of the box. So what do you get once you perform this standard evaluation image print? You will get this. And I'm going to show you one done in two drastically different papers. This paper right here is a Berita paper, high quality, from Breathing Color. I used their ICC profile. Wow, how did you do that? Well, I know how to link the profiles made by other manufacturers. It's something you learn as you learn the process of printing. Okay, and on a Canon printer, if you use ICM, you can choose a sub tab of that called Auto, and then open that up. It will show you all the ICC profiles you have installed, including this particular one from Breathing Color. And then I chose it. I did that in the driver. I did not do that in Photoshop or Lightroom or QImage. I did that inside the actual driver, and it printed it perfectly. Now this paper base is very warm, so I did the same thing on an Epson printer. I believe this was a Canon printer, and it's right here. If you take a look, they look very similar. The only difference is this rendition is a little bit warmer, mainly because of the fact that the paper base is warm. It's actually yellowish, If you compare it to this very cold neutral paper here, okay, I'm not going to give you the brand names because that's irrelevant at this point. But you look at that. You're going to look at this. You're going to examine various aspects of this image, and I have covered this in great detail in other previous videos. You want a ramp that is perfectly neutral throughout, from the darkest to the lightest. You want this image here to look neutral to you. You cannot have a color shift of any sort. The strawberries need to look bright and red, not orangey, not magenta. The kids' facial tones have to look normal. You know how to examine something and say, okay, that looks normal, or that looks green. They're not little Martians. They're actually little human beings, and they have perfect skin tones. That means that this output is correct. I have verified that. That's called verifying your printer. Once you do that, then the next step is that monitor. And we'll get to that next. By the way, before we proceed to the next point, let me go back to point number 2, where I state how expensive things can get. If you sit down and really truly think about this, it may make more sense to have your artwork or your photos produced by a private lab. If the frequency of printing is going to be so low, it really doesn't make sense to own an expensive printer with expensive consumables where you're only going to use it once or twice every 2 or 3 months. It makes no sense at all, because it will cost you in maintenance alone a lot of money. Okay, and guess what is used for maintenance? Ink. And original inks are expensive. So keep that in mind. All right, point number 4. You look at that standard image that you just printed, and it looks neutral to you, just like these two that I just showed you look neutral to me. When I view the image open on my monitor, my display, it has to match. It has to match that. It has to be as neutral as the results that printer produced. If it is not, if it's too bright, if it's too dark, if it has a color cast of any sort, that monitor needs to be calibrated. And it may not have a color cast, but it may suffer from non-linear neutrality from your RGB channels in your display, where they actually change hue slightly from dark all the way to the brightest possible red, green, or blue display, which would be a white. So you cannot have that. That's what you achieve when you calibrate your monitor. And guess what you need? You cannot use your eyes. No, you need a spectrophotometer. And the cheapest that I have come across is about $300 from Datacolor, a Spider calibrator, or if you want to go a little bit higher than that, about $550 is what they're selling for now. And I believe that X-Rite sold the i1 Studio to another company. And so yeah, that's another expense you have to consider, because otherwise your monitor, when you bought it from the store, is not calibrated for editing. None of those monitors you will hook up to a Windows machine are calibrated for editing photos. MacBook Pros, very bright, gorgeous displays, but they're not calibrated for photo editing. Okay, you have to meet a certain criteria. When I edit my photos, I edit in a darkened room. A room that is too dark for me to comfortably read a book. But it displays that image's range of tones perfectly. It's like being at the movie theater. You don't view a movie with the lights on. You view the movie with the lights off. So they have adjusted that luminance of that projector so that something that is black will look black in that dark environment. And that's what you need to get over mentally, that you cannot work in a very bright room with a very brightly adjusted monitor. You will do this. You will automatically downgrade the brilliance or the brightness of your images. And guess what you did? You turned them into a dark image. And it will print dark. That's why the biggest complaint from people who begin to print photos is that my prints are too dark. They may be neutral, they may be the correct color balance, but they always come out too dark. Another fact about this is that monitors, simply by their nature, are backlit. They're going to be very bright. It's like looking at a transparency at the mall, showing you a Rolex watch. It looks bright. If you saw that same image, that piece of film laying on an opaque table, just from overhead lights, it would look dull. Paper images are dull. They cannot be as brilliant as your monitor. Never. So that is something that you need to accept and realize that, yeah, there is some deficiencies to printing on paper, something opaque, especially with pigment inks. With dye inks on a glossy paper, you tend to get very brilliant results, and this is about as good as it gets. This is about as good as it gets, folks. I have never seen a better rendition of this standard image before. And I'll tell you at the end, if I remember, I will tell you at the end what printer I used to print that. So get over the fact that, your prints may not match your monitor. That standard image may not match what you produce. Take that print, light it heavily, isolate it from the screen, and look at the two. Glance back and forth to see if there's any difference in color. Color is important here. Don't worry about the brightness. Like I told you, you can darken that screen as much as you want, and it may still be brighter than your print. So be aware of that. It's just, there's no way to match it. There really isn't. You're only going to get a close match, but not perfect. All right, so calibrate your monitor. When you use the manufacturer's software, whether it is X-Rite or whether it is Datacolor, you will be able at the end of your process to compare the before and after. And if there was a yellow cast to your monitor, like most will have, or bluish cast, makes it look bright. That's what that slightly blue or higher than daylight temperature sort of psychologically affects you into thinking that it is very bright. And that's what they want. That's a selling point on screens, especially TV screens at the big box stores. Yeah, it's a trick. So calibrate your monitor, finish the process before and after, check out the look, and you will see that the new version is actually the improved version. It might look darker, it might look slightly different color cast because you were so used to the previous one. It takes a while to get used to it. Once you get it calibrated so that when you view that image it's perfectly neutral, you are good to go. Now you are open to print your images. It took a long time, didn't it? Make sure that you calibrate that screen so that at least you get a neutral rendition of that control image. Why do we want a control? You need a control. You need something that is constant. Ink batches might change. Paper batches might change. Printer units of the same model are not the same. They output slightly different. So many variables. The only one that you can actually rely on is your monitor outputting correctly. Just like a fever thermometer. I always say this. Your fever thermometer better be accurate, because I don't want to be lied to that I have a fever when I really do not. Okay? Next, we talked about consumables being expensive. Now, OEM inks, that's what that means, original manufacturer equipment. So, what are your options? Well, some of the older printers allow you to use third-party products. Those third-party products range from absolute garbage to very good. Okay? So that will allow you to cut back your printing costs. If you are not printing enough because of the cost, so maybe this is one option you should consider going with. Third-party products. Now, what are the reliable products out there? Well, mostly from the USA, they're all very good. Whether it is cone color for all your Epson needs, precision colors for both Canon and Epson, Ink Owl, Ink Republic, and maybe some that I don't even know of, they're all pretty reliable. They have very good proven inks. And if you're worried about your inks causing problems, no. This day and age, these inks are reliable and they do not cause any problems. So that's nothing you need to be worried about. I have not experienced any problems whatsoever lately in the past, say, 10 years with using third-party inks. Now, you have to have a printer that will allow you to load refillable cartridges, especially in the Epson line. Not Canon. Canon allows us in many cases to simply either modify and refill or just refill directly our original cartridges. And why would you want to choose that route? Because original cartridges are built better than refillable cartridges. The quality control is a ton higher than that is applied for the manufacturing of refillable cartridges out of China. It's a very, very iffy proposition. You may have to buy 2 to 3 sets of refillable cartridges to compile one full set that actually gives you the correct level of ink delivery. So if you can go Canon, you'll be able to, in most cases, use the original cartridges, and that will ensure that your ink flow will remain at the same rate of reliability as they were before you refill them, as long as you do it properly. So yeah, keep that in mind. Now, I try to refill a lot of my printers using original inks, and the only option that you have available for that is if for some reason you can find the same type of ink used by, say, another similar model that are using the same formulation, and you can buy large cartridges. Your cost per milliliter is going to drop. It's not going to be as expensive. Yes, it's going to be a lot higher than third-party equivalents, but at least you will know that you are using OEM inks. You'll get your top quality results, and you're saving some money by buying, for instance, for this printer, I buy 700 milliliter cartridges, and I take 80 ml loads every time that I need to fill my cartridges. That saves me a lot of money. Okay. Now, companies like Precision Colors, they sell very good quality, tested and also tweaked to be a somewhat better match to OEM inks than most of the other available ink sets out there. So that's why I push PC a lot, because they have been proven to me to be able to produce outstanding results. So yeah, so a lot of options are available for you. It depends on the printer model. Epson, for instance, have began to lock down a lot of the models available here in the USA against the use of any kind of third-party consumables, unfortunately. So their only option at this point is to use OEM. Now, Canon printers are a little bit more liberal, although the newest 2 versions of the 13-inch line basically do not have resettable chips. So you have to rely on other options, such as disabling the chip once it is declared empty. And there's a series of steps that you have to use to be able to achieve that correctly. But again, it's not like it's impossible to achieve, but they have made it a little bit more difficult. Now, if you guys have access to a Pro 100 that's still wide open, you can actually modify your cartridges, reset them, and refill them. Pro 10, the same thing. Pro 1000 at this point, I am running on disabled chips, mostly through the whole set of 12. But again, it saves me a lot of money. So that saves me from having to come up with the excuse that inks are too expensive and therefore I cannot put my printer through the paces I should be putting it through producing prints. Okay? There are options. Number 6, you must accept a commitment to print often. Oh, come on, Jose. Why? Why can't it be like my car? I don't have to drive it for weeks at a time and it's fine. Well, actually your car has fuel injectors. Very tiny, right? Very tiny openings. Think of it as having thousands of fuel injectors that are microns in diameter. And in this case, you are dealing with ink that contains microscopic rocks, pigment particles. You have to print often. Guess what? If you have a syringe with anything that will dry gummy or anything that has a particulate type structure, it will clog up. It will dry up and clog. And you will have to run a wire through that needle to clean it, to ream it out. Well, we don't want to do that to our precious printheads, right? The way to prevent any kind of nozzle problems is to use your printer. It seems almost a little bit weird to say the more you use your printer, the healthier your printer will be. Well, wait a minute, I'm going to wear it out. Not really. Not really. All of the rubber components in rollers and such actually will last longer than if you just let it sit unused for, say, 5 years. That rubber begins to deteriorate and crack. It can no longer transport paper efficiently. So yeah, you need to use your printer. Use it as often as you can. If you do not have enough work, then maybe you should not own a printer. As simple as that. Otherwise, you have to accept the responsibility that if you do not print often, the next time you print, you may have a nozzle problem that you'll have to clear out by, running cleaning cycles that waste your precious ink until your nozzle check is perfect before you print that next batch of images. Yeah? If you had printed every other day or every 3, even every week is enough. Okay, but not every 2-3 months. You cannot let it sit for that long. Okay? And like we discussed earlier, number 7, understand that you will never be able to reproduce what you see on your display 100%. And that will pertain to certain portions or parts of your image. On the standard image, there are purposely some colors that cannot be reproduced, period. And those are located right on top here. So even though they look like they were reproduced, if I go to my monitor, you will see a drastic difference in the actual rendition of what the monitor is showing you. The monitor has the ability, because of its backlit nature, to show that top row of colors extremely bright, almost neon-like, which cannot be reproduced on paper. It cannot. Okay? Keep that in mind. So certain colors, certain deep blues, certain purple, certain really strong reds are simply beyond the capability of 9 lousy colors, 6 lousy colors, even 11 plus chroma. It's not enough. You don't have enough colors in that ink palette to be able to handle that huge range of colors that can be reproduced by simply having light emitting diodes or phosphors, whatever you call them. They can produce a lot more colors than ink can, especially pigment ink. Pigment ink range is a lot less than dye ink. So you will never get, a certain level of orange that looks ridiculously neon on your screen. That's not the way it's going to look on your prints. Accept that. Quit losing sleep over that. I get so many comments from people, and it all boils down to that. Oh, my bright greens are not reproducing as bright on paper. Of course not. They cannot. They cannot. Different animal. Paper. Light hits it. If it's dye ink, light penetrates, bounces back, and you see your image. With pigment, even worse. Pigment particles are opaque. Light fights its way through, bounces back. Yes, it looks duller. It has to. Different type medium. So yeah, you will never get a match of certain colors. Now, if your images are not demanding, and in my video where I discussed this whole subject, I showed you how I perform a soft proofing on this panoramic print that I made for my wife and me. And when I did the soft proofing, nothing changed. On, off, and nothing changed. That means my image, the way I prepared it, was within the gamut of that paper that I made that profile with, through which I was then soft proofing. You see, so that's getting way ahead on the curve for you guys that are just starting, to print. But just basically keep that in your head. You cannot reproduce certain colors, period. You just won't be able to. No printer is able to do that today. Maybe in the future, printers will be able to print that original image the way the screen displays it. And I think I discussed this already, but basically, Avoid utter confusion by fully mastering the simple process of printing an image using your printer's paper brand before you go experimenting with other media. Okay? If you cannot master, in other words, by mastering I mean you edit an image in your calibrated monitor, file print, whether you use color management from the printing module in Photoshop or whatever you edit with, or letting the driver do it if you're using a brand that is made for that printer. If you have not mastered that, in other words, I hit print, I go to the bathroom, or go get me a cup of coffee, or hey, wait a minute, drink some coconut water, I know that when that print emerges, it's going to meet my expectations of what that printer can produce. I don't have to worry about it. I already know it's going to be correct. It's going to please me. It may not match exactly if my image is a little demanding, but if it is not a demanding image, in other words, if everything is in gamut. Whose gamut? That gamut. Those gamut. Then and only then, I know that I am ready to then start experimenting with other media. And here are a bunch of them. I have a crap load of different papers. Tons of different papers. Over 50 different makes and surfaces and thicknesses and level of whiteness or warm or coolness. Yeah, too many papers. You know what I gravitate to? Pro Luster. Matte. Everything from Canon. It's just so easy to print on. You don't have to worry about color management. It's handled automatically for you. But again, don't get confused. The minute you start messing around with other papers, then you have to get their ICC profiles, and you better know how to use them. You better know how to use them. You see what I mean? So if you stay with Canon paper on a Canon printer or Epson paper on an Epson printer, it handles that aspect of color management for you automatically, as long as you use ICM on an Epson printer or driver matching or ICM on a Canon printer. They give you two options in Canon and one option on Epson to basically print automatically. It will not match it to what it sees on the screen absolutely, like 100%, 98%. Maybe you have very, very neon reds. Well, those are not going to reproduce, period. It'll be red, but it may not be neon on paper. It's impossible. Impossible. This is number 9. Consistency can only be achieved if your workflow is, well, consistent. How about that? What a silly statement, right? Well, that was my problem when I started. I was extremely inconsistent. Every time I printed, I experimented with different settings, this and that, and I didn't know what any of those settings did. Okay? I finally learned about 2.5 years into this game. I would say probably around 2002 is when I began to finally get this a little bit. Okay? And you got to remember that the art of photo printing on inkjet printers was new at that time. Not too many printers were available. Not too many people even knew how to use them properly. Heck, my lab at my institute did not really know how to print. They just chose printer, type, and that's it. And left everything else as default. And so they get results that may match, may not match, but they really didn't care. Well, we began to care throughout the early parts of this century. And so then finally I got the process down. I began to save some settings that I knew produced good results. That way I didn't have to guess next week. What the heck did I use last week? I was getting great results last week and now I'm not. Well, because I did not use the same settings. You see what I mean? Consistency, consistency. Now, if you have a tool that will save settings that you previously used, that will help you out, especially if you have a sponge for a brain like I do. You get old, that happens to you, you know that. So, again, be consistent. This will be number 10 and this will be the last one. I know you guys are saying, when is this guy going to stop talking? If you travel for months at a time, and I had 3 such questions concerning that. please consider not buying a high-end printer. Simple. You cannot print for 3 months. Really, you could turn off the printer. You can hope that when you come back, it's okay. More than likely, a modern printer, they're highly, highly evolved units nowadays. It might be okay. But there is an option. There is an option for you. Purchase QImage. QImage has the ability to schedule so-called purge sheets or purge images to be printed at a certain schedule of days, like every 2-3 days or whatever you choose to schedule it to while you are away. The only caveat is you need to leave your printer on, you need to leave your computer on, and you need to leave QImage open. Maybe now it works even with QImage not being open. I don't know. I think so. And you will get this printed every single time. And this is a custom-made purge unit which takes into account the ink palette that your printer uses. Okay, if it has green ink, it's going to then set up a green set of lines to print. If it has red, it's going to set up a red set of lines to print as well. Whatever colors your ink palette uses, this one has red and blue. So I custom build that purge sheet for this printer. It will be different than the one for the P800, the one for the Pro 10, and the one for the Pro 100. Okay, so that will allow you to go away, come back. You will see several of those sheets on your tray, and that'll be it. Your printer will have been exercised. If your printer, such as the Pro 1000, has both black matte ink and photo black ink, you can set up 2 separate jobs using 2 different types of paper to trigger the use of the matte black and the photo black. I recently had an episode where I did not use my matte black channel for a very long time, and it had a clog, and I was able to clear it out by doing cleaning cycles, thank goodness. But anyway, yeah, you can go away for 2-3 months at a time. As long as everything is on, it will then continue. If you're worried about power outages, you need to buy one of those units that have a battery for power and install it on both units, both your computer as well as your printer. All right, I have a little extra bonus comment here. You thought it was over with, right? No, it's not over with yet. Don't lose sleep. You will never achieve perfection. Never. In order to achieve what's close to being perfection, you would have to introduce another process to your complete photographic photo producing process, and that is camera calibration. Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame, but that allows that image that comes out of that memory card to be color corrected. And what does that mean? It means that you're creating a profile just like you create printing profiles for the errors or the inability of your camera sensor and maybe the lighting conditions, maybe your lens, it's all combined, okay, to produce an accurate rendition of what it saw. You actually shoot a control card under those conditions. You use that shot to then calibrate or create a profile that will create for the slight coolness of the lighting or the warmth of the lighting or the sensor not being able to accurately do a saturated red or green or blue or yellow, magenta, cyan, whatever. It will create a profile. You can then, as you load your bunches of images, you apply that profile and correct all of them at once. Now what you are viewing in your calibrated monitor, which I hope you're doing as well, will be at the top level or possibility of perfection. It will still not be perfect, okay, but at least you know that you are at the top capabilities of your camera, your lens, the conditions you shot under, your monitor displaying that image that has now been corrected, has had a profile from the camera applied to it. Oh my gosh, yes. QImage does that for you as well. QImage has tons of built-in camera profiles The only difference is that it does not correct for lighting conditions, but it will correct for sensor errors and lens. Okay, it's up to you to then change the color temperature to whatever you wish to have. It is a way to squeeze, if you will, the maximum quality of your setup. Your camera lenses, because they all produce slightly different results. Yeah, monitor, printer, paper, ink, you name it. So many variables. All right, that is it. No more. Hope you enjoyed this. Remember, learn the process before you jump. Printers are getting so expensive now, it's ridiculous. Okay, I know a lot of you will be tempted to catch a deal before Christmas. Okay, be assured that you can keep that printer for months unopened. Just go ahead and learn the process. View my basic printing playlist. I will have this video in it, as well as others that are already in there. It'll walk you through. I walk you through Canon and Epson processes, Photoshop, Lightroom, QImage. Any way you want to print using those 3 tools, and Canon and Epson printers covered to death. Okay, so you should be able to at least visualize the process, so when you jump into it, it will not be, I don't want to say like reading Greek, but you know what I mean. All right, that is it for now. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like, and until the next time, happy printing. Bye-bye.